Hey everyone, and welcome back for your daily news roundup. We've got big stories breaking all over the world today, so let's get right to it.
Let's do it.
We'll start with a heartwarming homecoming. 5 Thai farm workers held hostage by Hamas for over 500 days are finally back in Thailand.
Yeah, I saw that. It must be incredible for them and their families after so long.
Absolutely. Their return has been met with so much emotion, and there's even been a traditional Thai ceremony to welcome one of the men back.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. It really highlights the cultural significance of this event.
It really does. And the Thai government is stepping up, too. They're offering financial support to help these men rebuild their lives so they don't have to return to Israel for work.
That's amazing. Gives them a real chance to start over.
Definitely. But sadly, one hostage is still missing, and efforts are ongoing to secure their release.
Fingers crossed for their safe return.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears to Germany, where Friedrich Merz, a prominent figure in the CDU, is causing a stir with his stance on immigration.
He's really trying to tighten migration laws, and his willingness to maybe even collaborate with the far-right AfD party is sparking a lot of debate,
It's definitely a controversial move.
especially compared to the more centrist approach of his predecessor, Angela Merkel.
A big change indeed. And speaking of shaking things up, let's move on to Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. His latest target, biomedical research grants.
Yeah, he's taking aim at what he calls excessive spending on things like buildings and equipment for research.
Indirect costs, as they're called. Musk says it'll save taxpayers money.
But a lot of scientists are pushing back. They're worried these cuts will slow down vital medical research.
It's a tough situation.
Yeah.
And Musk is facing pushback on another front, too. A federal judge just blocked DOGE from accessing personal financial data held by the Treasury Department.
That was a big win for the group of state attorneys general who filed that lawsuit. They argued it would be a violation of federal law to give DOGE access.
And the judge agreed, issued an injunction to stop it.
Didn't make Musk very happy.
No. His reaction on X was pretty telling. But on a more somber note, we have news of a tragic bus crash in Mexico.
At least 41 people were killed when a bus traveling from Cancun to Tabasco collided with a trailer and caught fire.
It's a heartbreaking incident. And in Alaska, we have another tragic accident to report. A plane crash has claimed the lives of all 10 people on board.
The plane, a Cessna Grand Caravan, was flying from Unalakleet to Nome when it disappeared from radar. They've found the wreckage, and the NTSB is investigating.
A difficult task, given the remote location and harsh weather conditions.
Absolutely.
Now back to the political arena. There's a lot of anxiety surrounding Musk's DOGE and their interest in the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB.
DOGE has gained access to the CFPB's computer systems.
And people are worried about what they're going to do with all that consumer data. There have already been protests.
And to add to the uncertainty, the CFPB's website has been having problems. The front page is showing an error message.
Not a good sign.
Yeah.
Could be a sign of things to come.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, President Trump has revoked former President Biden's security clearance.
Again, citing concerns about Biden's handling of classified information and some of his past actions.
It's not the first time this has happened. Biden revoked Trump's clearance back in 2021.
It's like this back and forth never ends even after they've left office.
It really shows the ongoing power dynamics between them.
And those dynamics can have global consequences. We're seeing that with the current U.S. foreign aid freeze. Experts are warning this could lead to some serious health crises around the world.
It's a major concern. Essential health programs funded by USAID are being disrupted. There's a lot of worry about a surge in diseases like TB and HIV.
And this isn't just theoretical. The consequences are already being felt.
Exactly. HIV clinics are shutting down, drug trials are being interrupted, and the risk of disease spreading is going up.
It's really hitting people hard. We've heard from a Ukrainian man living with HIV who's worried about getting his medication, an Afghan midwife who's seeing her clinic close, an Iranian activist whose organization's work has been halted.
Real people caught in the middle of all this.
It's a reminder of the human cost of these decisions. Now for an update from the front lines in Ukraine. North Korean troops are back on the battlefield.
I thought they suffered heavy losses.
They did, but President Zelensky just announced their return. They're now involved in new attacks within Russia's Kursk region.
That area is partially occupied by Ukraine?
Yeah. Some experts think North Korea might have sent them back because they're running out of options. They might be poorly equipped for this kind of modern warfare.
Well, the situation in Kursk is definitely tense, with both sides claiming victories. Hard to say what impact the North Korean troops will have.
We'll have to see. Now, while the world is focused on Ukraine, another big shift is happening. The Baltic states are disconnecting from the Russian power grid.
This is huge. They're finally breaking away from their Soviet past and joining the EU's network.
It's a historic moment, but there have been some challenges along the way.
Yeah, there are concerns about Russia potentially launching cyber attacks or disinformation campaigns during this transition.
The stakes are high for sure.
Hmm,
There's even a giant clock counting down to the final disconnection. It's a powerful symbol.
definitely. And while the Baltic states are navigating these challenges here on Earth, let's look at a more positive story from space. NASA astronaut Sunita Williams is making the most of her extended stay on the International Space Station.
Her mission had to be prolonged because of some unexpected repairs, but she's choosing to view it as an opportunity rather than a setback.
That's a great attitude to have.
It is. Speaking of unexpected situations, Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau is dealing with some interesting remarks from President Trump.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
Apparently, during trade negotiations, Trump suggested that Canada should just become the 51st U.S. state. Yeah. Some people might laugh it off, but Trudeau seems to be taking the possibility seriously, especially with trade tensions running high.
I bet. What did he say about it?
His comments were actually accidentally caught on a hot mic.
Wow, that makes it even more interesting. Adds another layer to the already complex relationship between the U.S. and Canada.
For sure. Sadly, we have more tragic news. The victims of the school shooting in Sweden have been identified. 7 women and 3 men lost their lives.
Awful. Where did that happen?
It took place at an adult education center in Örebro. The investigation is still ongoing.
Such a senseless tragedy.
It is. One of the victims, Salim Isker, was a Syrian refugee who fled the conflict in 2015. It's a reminder that violence can strike anywhere.
Absolutely.
Now, shifting to global affairs, many countries are reaffirming their support for the International Criminal Court, despite sanctions imposed by the U.S.
I saw that. What prompted the sanctions?
Well, the U.S. imposed them after the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu over alleged war crimes in Gaza.
That's a big deal.
It is. The U.S. has argued that the ICC infringes on national sovereignty and is biased against Israel.
But despite the sanctions, the ICC is still operating.
And its member states are committed to international justice. It's a real testament to the global support for this institution.
It is. And on a later note, Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba seems to have figured out how to handle a meeting with President Trump.
He held what were called Trump study sessions to prepare. He got advice from people who know Trump well.
That's pretty smart.
It is. The meeting went well, focusing on trade and defense cooperation.
That's good to hear.
It shows how important it is to understand different personalities, especially in diplomacy. Now, before we move on to the lighter side of things with the Super Bowl, there's one more story we need to touch on.
Oh, what is it? What is it?
It's about astronaut Sunita Williams and her extended stay on the International Space Station. Seems like there's more to this story than we initially thought.
Really? What happened?
Well, her mission was extended because they needed to make some unexpected repairs on the station. It wasn't exactly a voluntary extension.
Oh, I see. But she's still staying positive about it.
Right. Which brings us to another unexpected situation. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau trying to figure out what to make of President Trump's suggestion that Canada should just become the 51st state.
Wow, that's a pretty wild idea. What do Canadians think about that?
Most of them seem to be taking it with a grain of salt. But Trudeau's reaction suggests he's not completely writing it off either.
Makes sense with all the trade tensions between the U.S. and Canada these days. Speaking of international relations, the International Criminal Court is facing some new challenges with those sanctions imposed by the Trump administration.
Yeah, these sanctions are a direct response to the ICC issuing an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's being accused of war crimes in Gaza.
I can see why the U.S. isn't happy about that.
The U.S. has always been critical of the ICC. They argue that it undermines national sovereignty and has a bias against Israel.
So these sanctions are basically an escalation of that stance.
Exactly.
Ugh.
And it could really make it hard for the ICC to do its job going forward. It's a big concern for international justice and holding people accountable for these kinds of crimes.
I bet. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Now, remember those Trump study sessions Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba held to prepare for his meeting with President Trump?
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating. He really did his homework on Trump's personality and got advice on the best way to interact with him.
And it sounds like it paid off.
It did. The meeting focused on strengthening ties between Japan and the U.S., and everything went smoothly.
Good to hear. It shows how important it is to really try to understand where someone else is coming from, especially when you're dealing with someone as unpredictable as President Trump.
Absolutely. Now let's dive into a story that has a little bit of everything, history, technology, and even a bit of mystery. It's the tale of this burnt scroll from the ancient Roman town of Herculaneum.
Herculaneum, wasn't that the town that was buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius along with Pompeii?
That's the one. And this scroll has been closed for 2,000 years, its contents hidden beneath layers of ash and time.
Wow, that's incredible. What do they think is inside it?
Well, using some cutting-edge technology, scientists are finally getting a glimpse inside. They're combining X-ray imaging with artificial intelligence to virtually unwrap the scroll.
It's amazing what technology can do these days.
I know, right? And they believe this scroll might contain a philosophical work from ancient Rome. Imagine the insights we could gain if they can figure out how to read the whole thing.
That would be incredible. A window into the past. Speaking of the past, our next story takes us to Panama, where an indigenous community is facing the very real consequences of climate change.
The Guna people, who live on the island of Gardi Sugdub, are being forced to move to the mainland because rising sea levels are threatening to submerge their home.
Oh, wow, that's heartbreaking to have to leave the place you've always called home.
It's a difficult decision, but the Guna people are trying to stay positive. They see this as an opportunity to build a better future for their community.
That's a good way to look at it. What are they doing?
They're creating a new settlement called Isberiala. It will have better housing access to education and a chance for them to preserve their traditions while adapting to these new challenges.
That's great. It shows their resilience and determination to hold on to their culture even in the face of this really difficult situation. Now let's shift gears back to the political landscape and Elon Musk's plans for the U.S. government.
His Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has really been shaking things up in Washington.
He's not afraid to make big changes, is he?
Not at all. He's pushing for massive cuts, streamlining processes, and overhauling entire agencies. Some people applaud his efficiency, but others are worried about how much power he has and what it means for important government services.
And it seems like Congress is starting to take notice, too. I read that some Democrats are questioning whether his actions are even legal.
Yeah, it's becoming a real power struggle between Musk, the Trump administration, and those who are trying to hold them accountable. We'll have to see how it all plays out. Now back to international affairs. The Trump administration's sanctions against the International Criminal Court are facing a lot of pushback from the global community.
A lot of countries see this as an attack on international justice, right?
Exactly. They view the ICC as a crucial institution for investigating and prosecuting war crimes and other atrocities.
And the ICC has been looking into some sensitive cases that involve the U.S. and its allies.
That's right. They've been investigating alleged war crimes by U.S. forces in Afghanistan, and they've also issued arrest warrants for people from some of America's closest allies.
Which hasn't made the Trump administration very happy.
Not at all. These sanctions are likely to make it much harder for the ICC to function, and it raises serious questions about the future of international law and efforts to seek justice for victims of these terrible crimes.
It does. But while the U.S. is trying to weaken the ICC, another international organization is actually getting a surge of support despite U.S. opposition.
You're talking about UNRWA, right?
Yes, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees.
The Trump administration has cut funding to UNRWA and been very critical of their work.
But dozens of other countries have come out in support of the agency. They say they believe in UNRWA's mission, and they want to keep supporting their work regardless of what the U.S. does.
UNRWA provides essential assistance to millions of Palestinian refugees, things like education, healthcare, and social services.
That's so important. It's a powerful message from the international community. They're showing that they're committed to helping these vulnerable people, even when there's political pressure to do otherwise.
Absolutely. And now let's take a break from all the serious news and dive into something a little lighter, Super Bowl 59. Super Bowl 59 is almost here, and it's already shaping up to be a huge event.
Yeah, it's more than just a game now. It's this whole cultural phenomenon with storylines on and off the field.
Exactly. Celebrity appearances, potential scandals, political stuff, it's all there.
Like the halftime show, Kendrick Lamar's headlining for the second time.
That's going to be big.
But there are rumors that he might use it to reignite his feud with Drake.
Oh, wow. A diss track performed live in front of millions of people.
Could you imagine? And then there's the whole Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce situation.
What's going on with them?
Swifties are convinced he's going to propose after the game.
I've heard those rumors. It'll be hard to ignore that storyline.
And then, of course, we can't forget President Trump going to the Super Bowl.
It's the first time a sitting U.S. president will be there.
Has to be some kind of record.
Probably. His presence is going to be controversial.
Yeah, especially with all his criticism of the NFL in the past.
It's a bold move for sure. And speaking of bold moves, the NFL replacing the "End Racism" slogan has sparked a lot of debate.
What did they replace it with?
The new slogans are "Choose Love" and "It Takes All of Us."
I can see why people are upset.
Yeah, some see it as backing away from addressing racial injustice, but others think the new slogans are more fitting for the current climate.
It's a complex issue, no easy answers.
It just goes to show how even a football game can become a platform for social commentary and politics.
Well, that's what makes the Super Bowl so interesting, I guess. It's a reflection of society, everything from our values to our anxieties to what we want to see in the world.
I guess you're right. It's more than just entertainment. It's a glimpse into who we are.
Exactly. Well, that about wraps up today's Daily News Roundup. We've covered everything from those Thai hostages finally coming home to those power struggles between Elon Musk and the government.
And we even got a peek at all the drama surrounding the Super Bowl.
It's been a roller coaster of news.
It has. But we hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
We always encourage you to stay curious, stay informed, and keep engaging with the world around you.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.